Howdy folks, today we are installing the Strata roof rack from White Top Adventures on this 170 Sprinter. So I've laid out the parts here. One of the first things you're going to want to do is just open up the boxes, lay everything out, make sure you have all the pieces you need. Let's look them over. In our kit for the 170, and probably if you have a 144 Sprinter or something a little bit different, you're going to have a couple of front pieces and then a trim that goes on the side of that, a couple of rear pieces and the trim that goes on the side of that, and in my case for the 170, a couple of center pieces to span the gap and a couple of trim pieces that go on that. The trim can come in a couple of different colors when you order those. I just have the black here, but I am going to paint a little bit of an accent on there in just a moment here. Then for our hardware, we've got some connecting brackets that go across the middle and a variety of bolts and nuts. Go through your packages, make sure you have everything laid out and get a sense of what you're going to do. These are going to bolt into the tracks on the top of the Sprinter. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little customization. This trim piece here is going to sit over the top, and I'm going to put kind of a fiery orange, like a mango color, right behind these slots. So let's get that paint set up. So the first thing, we set these up with the orientation. So for example, this is going to be the passenger side, slopes down at the front, and the foot is to the inside. So this is my outside. This is my trim piece that sits over the outside. I'm just going to line up those holes. Just kind of eyeball them pretty close. And I'm going to take a marker and just kind of hit the edges so that I know where my edges are in here. Next thing we're going to do is slide these track nuts up into our track. We're going to put all 8 on each side. The 8 corresponds to the number of feet. So depending on the number of feet you have in your rack setup, you need that many on each side. We're going to slide those into the track, and then we can start to install these sides. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is prepare the front fairing. We are going to start with one of our cross beams, and we're going to, this is going to get installed on the back side of the front fairing, just like this. So we're going to take some T-nuts and these short screws, and we're going to put in through these holes here on the front fairing, a T-nut, and onto the back side. We're going to put these into each one of the holes. Then we're going to slide these over the top. Now you're going to install this loose to start with here. Just a couple of turns is all you're going to need. The ridge of the T-nut, that slotted part, facing the bolt, so it looks like this when it comes together. And our T-nuts are on the back. We're going to lay that with those T-nuts facing up. We're going to slide one of our beams through the top, through the edges of those T-nuts. It's going to come all the way down, just like this. Width. So we're going to turn that back over. Now those T-nuts are locked into the slots, and we can tighten up these nuts on the top. Here's our front fairing with a beam across the back. Okay, before we put our side rails up, each individual piece, the first thing we're going to want to do is take our trim pieces that goes on each one and just tack them into place so that they are ready to go. A couple things to note. So I'm working on the back piece here. The back piece on this vehicle has a bit of a flare down at the very end. The feet go to the inside, so this is the driver's side. It'll sit like this. And there are these little notches in the trim. Those notches angle forward, down and forward. So these are going to sit just like this. So we're just going to take a couple of the smaller, the medium-sized screws. We can call them small, and a couple of nuts, and put this in place. And I'm just putting it in loosely so that it's ready to go. You could do this after it's already up on top, but it's a little bit easier while it's down at the bottom right now just to set these on here. Just kind of equally space these as much as possible down the track. We're going to set our edge up in here and align these up with some bolts. So we have our outside piece. The feet go towards the inside. I have a 17mm socket, and I have in my pocket hardware, nuts, bolts, washers, well actually washers and bolts. So on each one I'm going to have a bolt. As you put these bolts through, there are certain locations, such as these top ones in the front, where it's going to go through the trim piece, it's going to go through the main wall, and then it's going to go into the cross beam that goes across the center. We're going to want to use the longer bolts for those. Also, as we come back to the joints, we're going to have the trim piece, the main wall piece, and these small pieces in here behind it. We're going to want to use those longer bolts for those. Anytime you're going to be going through both pieces of the sidewall and then something else like the trim or like a cross member, you're going to want to use one of the longer bolts. Otherwise, you can simply use those smaller bolts. The smaller bolts can also go through just the sidewall by itself and into the cross beams that are going to slide back and forth for your adjustability. So longer where necessary, shorter otherwise. Now we've got our three pieces on each side loosely bolted in. So that's our front one with our mango trim splash. And you can see a little bit of a divider there between the two. We haven't connected these yet. So they're loose. We can adjust them forward and back. There's a back piece that's hanging back there. And the trim pieces are also going to connect across those connector pieces. So the first thing we're going to do now is hang those trim pieces in place using those lower of the three screws. So that's going to be these guys here. We've got 1, 2, and 3. I'm just going to loosely put these in place with a couple of these lower screws so that it holds the trim piece on the side. And then we'll go to work on the connections between them. Okay, so we've put our back crossbar in. We've put our front crossbar in. Get the front and the rear in place. Get it adjusted forward and back exactly where you like it. And then we can figure out where to put the other cross members across. I'm going to have one, I've got one right behind this vent fan. I'm going to have another right in front. I'll have a similar right in front and back of the front fan. And then it really in the middle comes down to if you're going to have a platform you're going to walk on, solar panels, you're going to adjust those. They're going to go into these slots so you have some forward and back adjustability throughout the rest of these locations. Okay, we're up on top looking at kind of the end. I did put a crossbar right at the very front along the edge of the fairing and my little mango trim piece there. There's our fairing that goes across. I added a crossbar right in front of the fan, opened it up to make sure there's clearance, but got more than an inch. Crossbar right at the base, and I have a similar crossbar at the very back and right in front of the rear fan. I may add a second one in the middle depending on how the solar panels go, but I'm going to maximize this roof with solar, probably somewhere in the range of 400 to 600 watts. But it turned out really nice. Very nice rack system.